I have such an amazing privilege today because I am speaking with one of the most winningest coaches in college basketball history, Coach Bruce Pearl. But Coach, today, although many may know you as Coach Bruce Pearl, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a Jewish brother. And I wanted to give those people that follow Together for Israel just a heart of what it means to be a Jew today. We're living in a crazy world, Coach. And, you know, the news of a couple of Saturdays ago has rocked all of our worlds. But as a Jewish man with influence, how do you deal with something like this?
Well, first of all, Scott, father, brother, it's wonderful to be with you. And for those that are listening, forgive me. Please offer me grace. I'm going to speak to you from my heart as I understand things, and as I believe things. It doesn't make everything I say so, but it's so important that we have the ability to exchange our thoughts, our prayers, and ideas. Scott, right now, the Jewish people are really fighting for their existence. We're running out of places to go. Thank God for the United States of America that took my grandfather from Ternopil, right outside of Ukraine, when he was 11 years old. And he and his three younger siblings fled what they knew was going to be happening. And obviously, maybe not to the extent of the Holocaust, but they began to feel real anti-Semitism, escaped. Not all of my family, not all of my grandfather's family were so lucky to get out. So you talk about being grateful for the opportunities to be here. And then, you just look around the world, and what's heartbreaking is just days after we saw women being raped, grandmothers being kidnapped, women and children being burned alive, tortured, murdered, the atrocities, the genocide that took place. Just days after it, we saw Americans, protesters in New York or Los Angeles. We heard from some politicians that were standing by the terrorists and standing with Hamas. And it just tells you how deep the roots of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism have run throughout the world. And so right now, given the atrocities that we've seen, and Scott, let me tell you, you and I have been friends for a while. You've been following me on Twitter and hearing these things. While I was surprised it happened right now, although given the timing of the Abraham Accords and the discussion with Saudi Arabia, this was timed perfectly for the enemy, because they don't want peace, they don't want life, they want death, and they don't want a better life for their people. I'm not surprised, because Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah have been calling for a jihad and death to Jews for 75 years. Mm-hmm. So why? And Israel has been defending itself for 75 years. So we should not be totally surprised.
Yeah, when you look at a map of the Middle East, Coach, and you look at this little tiny blip on the map, Israel, surrounded by nations that want to see them eliminated, it's heart-wrenching. But you talk about 75 years, exactly 75 years, almost, well, certainly this year, when Israel became a nation, but going all the way back in history, our forefathers, once God chose Abraham, our Jewish scriptures says that there's no nation like Israel because it's the one nation that God chose to make a name for himself. So he chose Israel, not because Israel's better, but he chose Israel so that they could be a blessing to all the nations. No wonder, Coach, that ever since that time, whether it was Pharaoh or Haman or Herod in our Jewish scriptures, there's been a diabolical plot to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. We've been fighting for our existence since God chose us. But here's the thing. So many people think that it's the Jews against the Arabs. But you and I both know this. Within Israel, and we've been there many times, there's Jewish people and there's Arab people that want to live in peace. What, like, your perspective of Jewish and Arab relationships. I married a full-blooded Arab. We've been married 35 years. We've got kids that have Arab blood and Jewish blood in them. We're getting along just fine. And I think it's a little picture of what people really want. But this diabolical hatred is really amazing. How do we overcome it? How do we address it? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to go away unless there's a total annihilation, not of the Arab people, but of the agenda, the Hamas agenda.
Well, I think when God looks at your family, he smiles because he loved Ishmael.
That's right.
He promised Ishmael he'd make a great nation of him. And he loved Hagar. And he had a love for Sarah and Isaac that created the great Judeo-Christian nation. And so to me, that makes us brothers. And you know what? There are so many incredible, wonderful Muslims that value life and whose hearts are broken to see the atrocities and probably angry that they're being thrown into this mix with this radical, crazy Islamic extremism that exists throughout the world and even in this country. And so whether you want to go back to the Bible and understand that Jews and Arabs were living together mostly in peace forever. And yes, Israel is in Jerusalem is the only place in the Bible where God basically calls out his land. We weren't promised, nor were the American Indians promised America. The French were promised Paris. The Germans weren't promised Germany, but the Jewish people were promised the Holy Land. And so therefore the devil is at work and has been forever because God said it so. The devil is going to work against it in a dark and a sinister and an evil way. And you know what the problem, Scott, is that our Christian brothers and sisters, our young Jewish people, they don't know how to defend Israel. They just don't know how to defend it. And I think it's really simple about what's going on right now. So since Israel's creation, the Arab world has basically tried to destroy her. In 1948, if the Arabs had accepted a Palestinian state, along with the Jews, and the Jews didn't like what they got. They didn't like the way the thing was divided, but they took it anyways and said, all right, we'll deal with this. The Arabs said no. If they had said yes, they could be celebrating 75 years of having their own state. And then throughout history, they just turned it down because they really don't want to live as neighbors. They want the Jews dead, and they want all of Israel. And they've demonstrated it with their actions, historically. And I do go back to the Bible. And one of the verses that really always got me was when Jacob told Joseph when he was in Egypt and he was getting close to death. And you and I discussed this. He put his hand on Joseph's thigh and he said, take me back to the land where my father is buried. He was meaning Hebron. And of course, in Hebron is the cave of the patriarchs where Abraham and Sarah and now, of course, Jacob rests. Abraham overpaid for that land. We read it about it in the Bible. In fact, Jewish people, we don't overpay for anything. Abraham overpaid for the land, so nobody would dispute, that it was his. And it was, of course, prophesied that we would return to the land and we would prosper for about 75 years. So if we get to the end of the Bible, we sort of see it all coming together. And everybody here listening to this is either waiting for Jesus to return and for the Messiah to return, or Jewish people are waiting for the Messiah to come. We're all waiting on the same thing. And so that's the only thing that sort of gives me solace, is that maybe that's where we are and that maybe it can be better. But right now, Israel's got to defend herself. Right now, the way I would equate Hamas, they were a political party before they were anything. They were just like the Nazis. We appeased the Nazis prior to World War II. We appeased Hitler. We empowered him. We emboldened him. We allowed him to gain power. It's exactly what we've done with Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas. And now by so doing, they've been in a position where they've gone to war. And when we went to war with Germany, we had to destroy Hitler. We had to destroy the Nazis, and as a result, it saved the world. That's where we are right now in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing less than eliminating Hamas is going to wind up, and perhaps the other threats in the region, including Iran, who's responsible for all of it, might be the only way forward.
Interesting. You know, biblically with our people, I'm just thinking of Pharaoh and Haman. We're going to bring this to a close. Just 3 more minutes. I got one last question for you. Pharaoh, because he knew the Jewish people were favored, he said, I want every Jewish boy to be drowned. That's what he said to our people. He told the midwives, if it's a boy, drown him. Isn't it interesting, Coach, that Pharaoh met his demise by drowning? He was drowned in the very waters, of Israel's salvation. And then you've got Haman, who says that Israel, in the book of Esther, Israel needs to be annihilated. He actually erected gallows for them to hang on. And he found himself hanging on the very gallows for which he intended for Israel. That's my prayer and my heart. I do agree with you. These heinous people with wicked agendas, I'm really praying and believing are going to find their end on the very thing that they're placing Israel on, or hoping that Israel's demise is. I have hope for people. I have hope that God can intervene into people's lives. He can turn any heart, but I'm really believing for a Haman-like resolve. May the Esthers in our generation arise and appeal to our kings. Lord, save Israel. So, bro, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, brother. You know, my Hebrew name is Mordechai.
Come on.
My Hebrew name is Mordechai. And the story, obviously, in the book of Esther, Mordechai told his niece Esther, you could be next. And he gave her the courage to go in there and see the king and do the things that needed to be done to save the Jewish people. And Esther saved the nation. And so, you know, I'm grateful. And again, we don't have all the answers. We want to live in peace with the Arab world. We want so much. Hey, listen, one of the things that you led me to that I didn't answer, and I want to finish this up, having been to Israel many times, many of your listeners and people that are watching would not know that there are about 9 million people in Israel, 6 million Jews. About 2 million of the Arabs that are living there right now are either doctors or lawyers or teachers or first responders or judges. They serve in the military. They're Israeli citizens. They're experiencing peace and prosperity like no other normal Arab in the Arab world. Mm-hmm. And people don't know that. And listen, of the 1,300 Israelis that were killed, there were Arabs killed. Yeah. When Israel is fighting this war, there are going to be Arab IDF soldiers that love their country, Israel, who are going to be senselessly killed, trying to defend, you know, its existence. But for years, there have been some Arabs, some Palestinians, unfortunately, I would tell you probably most of the rest, that have been brainwashed to believe that Israel is their problem, when it's not Israel. It's been Hamas, it's been the Palestinian Authority, it's been the Islamic Jihad, it's been Iran. And unfortunately, many of the people that are still there in Gaza and in parts of Judea and Samaria, they are still the enemy. It's because they believe that the Jews should be killed and removed and dead, and they are to blame. Mm-hmm. They've been brainwashed. They've been taught this for years. We knew it, and somehow the world allowed it. Yeah. And now we find ourselves in the position we're in. We said never again. But we let it happen again. Mm-hmm. And we can no longer appease the enemy, the devil. Our God is stronger.
That's right.
Our God is with us.
That's right.
I stand with Israel.
It's awesome.
I stand with the Jewish people.
Come on, bro. I love it. In closing, you are a coach, and my listeners are on your team, and we're getting into the huddle, and you're talking to Christians around the world who love Israel and who love the God of Israel. We've got 3 seconds left on the clock, bro. What do we do?
Here's what we do. And I feel this way. When I went to Hebrew school, I did not study what an amazing Jewish man Jesus was his entire life. I didn't study what an incredible rabbi and teacher he was. There were so many things about the way he lived his life, the way he celebrated festivals, the way he kept Shabbat, the way he did the mitzvot, the good deeds that we're commanded to do, the way he studied Torah. He was one of the all-time greatest Jews of all time, the way he lived his life on earth. I didn't learn all that. And I would imagine there are some of my Christian brothers and sisters that didn't learn that either. And so to me, rather than separating some of the fundamental differences between the way Jews and Christians believe, we could all celebrate Jesus and all celebrate who he was, who he is, and hopefully who he will be. And to me, that brings my Christian brothers and sisters alongside of this fight. And God has commanded the Gentiles to stand with Israel. And so I just want to say I'm thankful to my Christian brothers and sisters who are on that walls fighting for Jerusalem, where Jesus will return.
Coach Bruce Pearl, I love you, and I'm so blessed to call you my friend and my brother.